A man's first love stays with him longer than he ever expects. Not because it's quote unquote perfect, not because it's was meant to last forever, but because it was the first time he ever loved without knowing the rules. Before experience, before fear, before he learned what heartbreak actually costs. A man's first love is usually the first time he opens his heart without armor. He doesn't know it yet, and he doesn't quite know how to protect himself yet, so he won't try. He doesn't have to calculate the outcomes for brace or brace for endings. He just shows up, fully, honestly, without holding back. And that's kind of what makes it different. In that first love, everything feels bigger. The laughs feel louder. The moments feel more meaningful. Even the silence feels important. He isn't distracted by what could go wrong. He's focused on what feels right now. And believes love is simple, that effort is enough, and loyalty guarantees his safety. He believes that if he cares deeply, all will be well and things will work out. And for a while, it feels like that. Your first love is the first person you imagine a future with. Even if you don't necessarily say it out loud or say it to them, the first person you picture in moments that don't even exist yet, the first person you trust with parts of yourself you haven't shared with anyone else, or you don't just fall in love with them. You fall in love with who you are when you're with them. You feel seen in ways that are new, validated in ways that feel permanent. And you start attaching emotions to memories, places, songs, seasons, etc. Without even realizing those things will follow you even long after the relationship ends. And when it does inevitably end, that's when the real lesson begins. Because heartbreak doesn't arrive loud at first. It'll come in waves of confusion and disbelief, in that strange feeling where you're still in love with someone who's no longer there. And that's when a man learns something he didn't really know about himself before. That loving deeply doesn't guarantee being loved back the same way. That effort doesn't always save things. That intentions don't always protect you from loss. And that realization changes him. Not in a dramatic way, not overnight, but permanently. After his first love, a man doesn't stop loving. He starts thinking. Becomes more cautious, more observant. He learns how to read tone, distance, silence. He starts noticing patterns. He becomes more aware of how quickly things can change, even when they feel solid. And where he once trusted so easily, he now pauses. Where he once gave everything he got, he now gives bits and pieces. Not because he necessarily wants to, but because he remembers what it felt like to lose someone he never thought he'd lose. His first love teaches him vulnerability before he understands boundaries. It teaches him attachment before he understands detachment. And because of that, it leaves an imprint even years later along the road. He may love again, he may love deeply again, but it's different. It's steadier, more controlled, less reckless, and there's this sort of quiet awareness in the background now. A voice reminding him of what's possible, both good and bad. And no, a man doesn't sit around comparing every last relationship to his first love. What he compares is how it feels. Like, does it feel safe? Does it feel honest? Does it feel real? Because once you've loved without fear, you notice when fear starts to show up. And that fear doesn't mean the love isn't genuine, it just means he's learned. A man's first love becomes his blueprint. Not necessarily for who he wants, but for how he wants to feel when he loves. Like comfortable, excited, chosen, understood, for example. And that's why it stays with him so long. Not because he wants to go back necessarily, in some cases, or because he can't move on, but because it was the first time love felt pure and untouched by disappointment. And there's also this kind of grief tied to the first love that people don't really talk about. Not just grieving the person, but grieving the version of yourself that existed before the heartbreak. That version that loved without hesitation or believed without doubt. Or the version that didn't know how much loving could hurt. The version that doesn't disappear, but it does. It grows quieter. And sometimes in rare moments, it will come back. In a laugh that feels familiar, or a connection that feels effortless. In a feeling that reminds him of who he used to be before he knew so much. And that's when he understands something very important. First love isn't meant to last forever. It's meant to teach. It teaches a man what love feels like before life complicates it. It teaches him how deeply he's capable of caring. And it shows him his strengths and his softness, often for the first time. And if he's lucky, he doesn't spend his life chasing that exact feeling again. He respects it for what it is. A beginning, not a destination. Because at the end of the day, a man's first love doesn't define his future. But it explains his heart. There's something else about a man's first love that stays with him, and it's the way it teaches him who he is when nobody is watching. In that first love, he doesn't just learn how to love somebody else, but he also learns how he loves, how deeply he cares, how much effort he is willing to give, and how far he'll go just to make someone feel safe. And that realization can be both beautiful and painful, because when that love does end, he doesn't just lose a person, he loses the place where that version of himself existed, the version that showed up without fear, the version that believed love was something he could pour himself into without worrying about the costs. And after that, love starts to feel heavier, not because it's worse, but because it's real now. He learns that timing matters, that two good people can still miss each other, that love doesn't always fail because someone did something wrong. Sometimes it just ends because life changes faster than feelings can keep up. And that's a hard thing to accept. So instead of being reckless with his heart, he becomes intentional. He stops giving love away just because it feels good in the moment. He waits, he watches, he listens. And sometimes that gets mistaken for being distant or emotionally unavailable. But the truth is, he just learned how much it hurts to give everything to someone that doesn't last. There's also a quiet respect a man carries for his first love, even years later. Not romantic longing necessarily, or regret, or just gratitude. Because without that love, he wouldn't understand the depth he is capable of. He wouldn't understand what a real connection feels like. And even if he never speaks to that person again, even if it takes them in a completely different direction, that love still plays a role. Thank you. As always, stay rolly.